Hello, everyone. This is the Cluster API Office Hour meeting. Today is Wednesday, 11th of December, 2024. And before starting, usual reminder that we abide to the CNCF Code of Conduct. So please be kind with each other. We have an agenda document. I will post the link in chat. If you don't have access to the document, you have to join the SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing list. Okay, let's get started. So as usually at the beginning of the meeting, we give room to new attendee to introduce themselves if they want. So if you are a new attendee, want to say hi to everyone in the meeting, please raise your hand now. Okie dokie, it seems there are no new attendees, so let's move to open proposal readout. We have two open proposals. One is for the in-place update group, and the other is for node provisioning working group. So is Tilo, do you want to give an update? Guglielmo, if he is here. We have Alex.
Yeah, I wanted to give an update on the in-place updates proposal. So Guillermo added a set of examples, which were asked by some people, the proposal, and we would like to do a live walkthrough. We can do this either on next office hours or schedule a separate meeting if it makes sense. Guillermo is not today present, so let's do it sometime later. But just letting everyone know that you can take a look at them.
Thank you. So just is this the updated PR? I'm on the right. Okay, yes, we have examples. So yeah, I chatted a little bit with Guillermo about this example. I suggest everyone is interested to take a look. They are showing in good detail how in place will end up, for instance, an upgrade or different type of change, the back and forth between the component. Very interesting. With regards to when we can go through, Alex, it is up to you or Guillermo if to do this in the main office hour or not. If it is something that is about, I don't know, up to 20, max 30 minutes top, we can do in the main office hour. Otherwise, it will be, yeah, a little bit too much. Up to you to figure it out. Okay, if there are no other comments about the in-place, Tilo, do you want to add something about node provisioning?
Yeah, we had a great kickoff meeting. Thank you to everybody who popped up. It was very, very productive. It went 10 minutes overtime, even though we had 60 minutes scheduled. You folks are playing awesome. It's great to be part of this, and it's great to feel this kind of momentum. So that's we made a few, we phrased a few like initial deliverables, things you want to try. And we were, I mean, given that beforehand there was quite a bit of discourse going on the working group PR and what direction we want to take this. I think we were in very strong alignment in the very first meeting. So we have a good idea on the path forward. And then we'll just code a little bit and see. The next working group meeting is Thursday next week. So in 8 days. And that'll be the last one this year. I'm not sure if we have any like tangible progress in terms of coding by then, but it's a nice way to shut down the year. So I'm looking forward to that. There's a minor issue with the PR, and I'm just about to comment on the PR, but then I thought I could just join the office hours and clarify that. So if we check out the working group PR, I have an ICS link there for calendar people can import, and on that calendar are all of the working group meetings. So it's pretty convenient actually. Since it's a URL to a Google Calendar, it will be updated with any changes we make in that calendar. So if we cancel a meeting or move a meeting, it'll reflect that in the ICS. You can import that to your favorite calendar tool, or to another Google Calendar. Like that works pretty seamlessly. But the CI is complaining, and it's claiming that the ICS URL returns a 404. I've tested multiple times on multiple machines with curl. It works. I don't know why it thinks it gets a 404. It would be great if we could have an exception for that one single test and that one single failure. So if folks could wave it through, I don't think there was any other feedback on the PR so far. We had, let me check. We had Justin Garrison speaking up on the PR and trying to figure out what the direction of the whole thing is. He's not here, is he? So then I'll ping him on the PR and mention it for the recording. Justin, if you're curious about like the general direction this is aiming for, just join our office hours at Thursday 5 p.m. UTC next week, and we'll have a chat about it. Like I think interactively we can clarify any confusion way better than via back and forth on PRs. And that's it from me.
Okay, thank you. I will look into the link. Maybe the simplest way is to just make the link a test and not a hyperlink, because yeah, if you make an exception for this merge, then we will have probably periodic job to keep failing, and so yeah, let's figure it out the easiest way to get it done. Okie dokie. Thank you for the update, folks. We can move to discussion topic. The first one is mine. Thank you, Christian, for writing it down. Yesterday we released Capi White.9, and great, huge kudos to the release team. Everything happened in time, scheduled. CI looked good and was well attended during the entire release cycle. Great work. I know that Sunat, which is the current release team, is pinging folks for the next release team that will start acting in January. If you are interested, please ping Sunat in Slack or me. We had a group of folks volunteering. This is great. I don't think that we are already at full staffing, and so if you have a little bit of expertise or you want to learn cluster API, it is a good place for doing both. And last reminder for provider and folks using cluster API, please start using new version, provide feedback as soon as possible. Okay. If there are no questions, next up is Carlos.
Yes, so this is more of an open discussion that I wanted to ask to the community, because especially now that cluster class is about to get out of experimental. While tinkering a bit with cluster classes, there are a few potential operations that maybe could be added that could be useful in cluster class, especially in terms of, for example, the way that the changes are released to clusters that are created from cluster classes. So as of today, with the original implementation of cluster class, the way that we release changes to clusters is either we change it cluster by cluster, or we change the class, all of the clusters that are created from that class are automatically updated. So this, when we are working with, for example, in an environment with multiple clusters, it's kind of easy to lose track of what clusters are being updated. So basically, my question here is, if there is any interest in the community of kind of trying to have a more granular approach to update clusters when using cluster class, rather than just having this approach in which we either have to update clusters one by one or update all of the clusters that are created from a class. So I don't know if this has been raised at any time before, but maybe someone finds this interesting, or maybe there's interest in discussing here.
Is there someone that want to comment to Carlos' point? Yeah, I imagine that what you are talking about is what is being discussed here about how you can upgrade a cluster and how you can change a cluster class. So all
Yeah,
the operation that
exactly.
everything is discussed there. So if you have idea, my suggestion is open an issue to kick off a discussion, describe your use case. And what is really important is to understand the use case. Technical solution always comes as a second step, and then we can go on from there. Christian, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think there are multiple angles to this. The one is managing the cluster class and bringing the cluster class to newer versions or introducing stuff there and maybe migrate clusters over. And the other angle is having a fleet of clusters and triggering the update for lots of clusters, maybe at the same time, which maybe is something which needs to build on top instead of squeezing that also into the existing controllers. But yeah, as Fabrizio said, would be awesome to have the use cases and issues. So yeah, could be constructive.
Yes, that would be like an example use case. So if, for example, you have an environment that has a lot of clusters, and you want to have like a fleet of clusters that you want to update, but keep some of the clusters out of that update. So having like right now we have either the option of updating cluster by cluster or updating all of the clusters that have been created from the cluster class. But I was thinking about having something in between. And if that is an interesting issue, and if the community is interested in having something like this, maybe we can work something. But yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the issue is the right way to get a discussion going, and then we will figure it out from there. Is there some more comment about Carlos' topic? Otherwise, we move to Jonathan.
Hey, I had a question about the new conditions type in the V1 beta 2 status. So I saw that we moved to the meta V1 condition, and I was wondering how I should categorize the conditions now that we no longer have the severity field. So for the visualizer app, I was using the severity field to determine which icon and color to display, like the error icon, if it was categorized as an error, warning, info, and ready, and so on. But now that that's gone, I'm not really sure, how I can maintain that behavior, or if it's just going to be a generic, like, not ready. And also for the status I saw that it can be unknown as well as true and false. So I'm not really sure if status should be unknown should be considered an error or just like a warning or what. If anybody has any thoughts or clarification, that'd be great. Thank you.
Is there someone that want to answer? Otherwise, I can give a go. So I think that so the answer is in Kubernetes core condition, there is not such a thing like info error warning. And if you look at the node, how can you know if node ready is an issue or not, or if node pressure is an issue or not? You have to basically look into the semantic of each conditions, which is yeah, maybe a step back, but it is how Kubernetes works. Luckily, in Cluster API, things are not so complex. So if you look into how implemented this stuff for the cluster cattle describe command, what really helps is the fact that in Cluster API we are using the same condition across all objects. So that means that the deleted condition will always be a condition with negative polarity. And so you know how to treat it. When it is true, it is good. When it is bad, when it is false, yeah, okay, I'm getting a little bit confused, but the point is, you know the polarity, you know how to treat it. Ready is always positive polarity, you know how to treat it. And let me say, it is one or two switch case, and I got it running in cluster cattle describe. But yeah, you have to look at the condition and at the semantic meaning of each condition. And with regards to unknown, also again we are aligning to Kubernetes. Unknown means the system is not working properly. So it is not an error. It's not. But yeah, for instance, cluster cattle, I'm using yellow for unknown, and red for when the condition is not good. So I managed to get something really similar to what we had before with those conditions. It is in the code. If you don't find it, ping me. I will point it to you.
Okay, is that in 1.9 release, or is that just on the main branch?
Yes, in the 1.9 release, there is already a cluster cattle describe minus v1 beta 2 flags. The code, the describe enter in a different code path, and you will find how for instance, I'm applying the color for the condition in that command there. So.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I can just try to follow your color conventions. Then.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's not a fancy code. It is a CLI, but it works. So. Okay, if there are no comments on Jonathan's point, let's move to the next point, which is Daniel.
Hey, so I had an update on the class namespace application PR. I think it's mostly addressed all the comments regarding the API design, validation, and performance concerns about webhooks. I've been looking into how things change in terms of memory layout and how much increase it may get if we add an additional index. And I think it's like in a matter of several kilobytes per 1,000 clusters. And it's not that much concern, but I wanted to ask whether or not it's something we need to look into this PR. But otherwise, I would say that please take a look. I think it's ready for review. and now that the release is out, nothing is blocking from trying this change. So yeah, that's an update. If it's
so, thank you. Yeah, I have in my to-do list to look into the index. But yeah, I got sidetracked by the release and by other tasks. I will try to come back as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to maybe ask for other people also to have a look, since thank you, Fabrizio, you're helping with reviews about last several weeks. That's why I'm bringing this up, that if you have interest in making cross namespace cluster classes work, this can be a way forward. Obviously, well, not obviously, but one of the parts of this, that the rebase procedure is not supported with cross-class namespace integration. I don't know if it makes sense to open an issue for that, to keep a track or address this sometime later, since it definitely involves multiple things like changes, templates, and reference custom resources, which may change the namespace location, and it, generally speaking, it definitely destroys the I guess isolation of namespaces in Kubernetes. So it might also be a longer topic for discussion, and also maybe some back improvements down the line. But if you think that it's worth making an issue, I can open one as a not completely closed question. But in the PR, I try to mention this as much as possible. So yeah, that's just basically an update. Nothing else from me if anyone has any questions. And also,
Okay, I don't know if it's me, but Daniel was cutting out a little bit. Are there questions for Daniel? Otherwise, we can keep working on this on the PR. Okie dokie. Next one is Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to make everyone aware of an issue here that I think is kind of a user experience issue that I want to address in the autoscaler. And this is going to get bigger as people do more GPU load, workload kind of related stuff. But the autoscaler uses a label to know that a node is going to eventually receive certain like accelerated hardware. And this is most often used with GPUs because when you create a GPU node, sometimes you need to wait for the drivers to be there before the node will have the capacity for like, an NVIDIA graphics card or something like that. When we created this, it was before the metadata propagation rules that we have now in Cluster API. And so originally we made this label that looks like cluster-API/accelerator. The problem with this is based on the metadata propagation rules we have now, that label will not propagate to the nodes. It will propagate to the machines, but there's no way that you could put it on your machine deployment or your machine set and have it accurately propagate to the node. And that's really what you want as a user to make this, transaction work the way we expect it. So I'm going to propose something, a patch to the cluster autoscaler that will migrate this to use a new label, which will be node.cluster.x-k8s.io/accelerator, which has the right prefix to be propagated to nodes properly. But since this has been in the field for quite a while, I'll make sure that the code in the autoscaler also recognizes the old label, until we decide to get rid of it. But we'll change all our documentation to focus on the new label so that people will have kind of a better experience when they're doing this. So that's about it. I just wanted to let people know and see if anyone had questions or comments about this, or maybe suggestions.
Are there comments? Some, Nolan?
I'm curious. I was just reading about the propagation rules and the history behind them before joining this meeting. Um, is this um, a label that needs to be continuously reconciled? I don't think an
Good question.
GPU can be added dynamically, but I might be wrong in that.
I mean, you could add this, like right now you would have to do this properly right now, you would probably have to have some automation or something. Or your kubelet, config would have to have this label baked into it or something. Because like the like cluster API won't sync this from the machine to the node for you because of the way it's displayed. So I don't think it needs to be continuously reconciled, but what's going to happen is when the cluster autoscaler tries to evaluate if it needs a new node in a node group, right? Like, so let's say I've created a workload. In my request for my workload, it's got a GPU, right? When cluster autoscaler sees that pending, it will try to make a node. But my pod won't schedule to that node until all the graphics stuff has been installed there and the node actually advertises a GPU, right? And the cluster autoscaler could get into a loop where it starts to create more machines because the GPUs aren't showing up, but the pod is still pending. So it becomes confused about what it's doing. This label, if it sees this label on a node that it thinks will have a GPU, then the autoscaler understands not to make more of those because it's still waiting for the GPU to arrive. So the autoscaler will continue to look at it. It won't really, the autoscaler doesn't have a reconcile loop, or it has its own reconcile loop, but it does it like once every 10 seconds by default. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way it would work from the cluster autoscaler side.
Yeah, I think that answers my question.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And I guess like if nobody has like, any comments about this, I'll probably just make an issue and put a PR up unless there are people who'd like to get into cluster autoscaler work, in which case I'm happy to help someone else. Yeah, Lumir, please.
Instead of the label, should have this been attained? Because that's the pattern.
That's a good question. Like maybe it should have been attained, but the way the way they wrote this in the cluster autoscaler, like this is not a cluster API decision. This was something they decided in the history of the autoscaler. They decided to use a label on the node as an indication that something will be there.
Yeah. Because, usually components use a taint with a no schedule effect, right? What is the migration period you're considering for this? For example, when we deprecated the master label and taint and migrated everybody to a control plane label and taint, I think that
Well,
took
there'll be
5.
no taint involved. It's just the label. And what we'll do is I think we'll have to consider how we broadcast if there's going to be a deprecation. Like we're going to deprecate it, right? But I think we might have to make the cluster autoscaler continue to recognize that label in perpetuity, even though we'll be advising users to use the new label. So I don't know if we can actually deprecate it fully, but I would, because the migration is going to be difficult. That's something a user would have to do on their own. Because this involves nodes and the label is kind of outside the purview of cluster API.
Sure. Yeah, for the record, we did completely remove even the master label from existing clusters. Like we iterated nodes and we actually removed it. It wasn't like something that was left over for the user to manually do.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
like,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, it was like a full cleanup completely. And But it was like I wanted to say it's like it was a really slow process, like 5 Kubernetes releases or something like that. And there was also a taint in the picture, right?
Yeah, I would expect something similar here. Like if we were going to actually deprecate it and remove the old label, I would expect us to give like 5 releases before we pulled it away. At at the minimum. But again, this is something right now that users have to manage on their own. So I think giving our users the ability to put this in their machine deployment and have the label propagate properly all the way down to the node will make this much easier so they won't have to think about it. And I'm not sure that I've heard any cluster API users who have hit this bug yet, but or this use case, but it's possible.
So thank you everyone for the discussion. I just want to add an option, Mike. So when we designed this label sync between machine and nodes, we decided to restrict the propagation to the node only to a subset of label of the machine. Okay, and this is where this node role prefix come from. But at the time we discussed maybe what we should do in cluster API is to make one day when we need it to make this more flexible. So via config flag or whatever, every cluster API, every management cluster can decide what are the labels that are going to be propagated to the node. And so this is another option. I had a chat with another contributor recently that it has similar use cases. Yeah, maybe this is a good change to have and will help in this use case and also others. So let's keep this in the back of the mind. I think Joel and then Nolan again.
Hey, I just wanted to see if you remember how much that conversation was around security. Because I was looking at this recently, and I know that there are restrictions that prevent Kubelet from providing labels for itself, right? You don't want it to claim, hey, I'm the master or I'm the worker, because that's something the admin should be doing. And so there's been restrictions added to Kubelet. I wondered if this came from that or there are other security concerns. Because I was kind of coming from this perspective of, well, if I'm the admin, right, and I say, hey, here's my machine set and I want it to have these labels, that's my decision. I'm the one who's made that. Surely the tool I'm using should be able to apply those for me. So I couldn't really work out why it was being restricted.
I think that the answer is the proposal security concern have restricted the load to set a label in the. So basically, we don't want to set a label like I'm the master, stuff like that.
But my point, I guess, is that Cluster API is the one creating this kubelet in the end of the day, right? So it's the one that has authority over what labels should be applied. And I'm not saying that it should use kubelet to register the labels, but I could kind of imagine that there was some sort of sync where, once the kubelet had come up, then some external cluster API component would reach into the cluster and say, hey, I know that you're my node, you relate to this machine, and I know that you have these labels, and kind of synchronize those across, right? Because it's the one that created that node at the end of the day. So why would it not be able to label that on the admin's behalf?
I got what you're saying, so but it is a two-step process. So basically, cluster API, the bootstrapper on the machine creates the node, but then this proposal specifically is about to keep labels in sync after the creation. So it is sort of day two operations. I don't know if this makes sense.
If I could interject a little here. So when this came up, we need to think about like from a perspective like a different use cases. So from an operator perspective, or an administrator perspective, like you might give away the ability for your users, for example, to operate on machines and machine deployment. But you don't want them necessarily to operate on Bootstrap configs, which that's where kind of like this comes in. So restricting those labels makes sense. So something that we chatted, and I chatted with Fabrizio recently about this as well. I'm going to open an issue actually just today, so I'm glad this came up, is to make this configurable, as in we would by default like a be secure, but the controller can have a flag to allow either extra domains or all of them, to your point. It's like if I know what I'm doing in my clusters, hey, sure, yeah, why not? Right? It's like the labels can be synchronized. But we still want that to be opt-in from a security perspective. And we want to give like the ability to customize those prefixes or globs in this case to operator administrators. So I was going to open an issue later today, but and then I already have a POC locally.
Cool. If you could tag me on that, that's helpful. And yeah, thanks for the explanation.
Thanks, Vince and Joel. I see Nolan lower his hand, so Lubomir.
I want just to clarify that this limitation comes from a controller in case the labeling stuff. It's the node restriction controller. It's enabled by default in Kubedium. It's not enabled by default in Kubernetes. So what this controller does is prevents, just on top of my head, it just prevents a node client to modify different nodes, a node client to delete its own node. And also, we're talking about this limitation about labels in a particular namespace. And there's a very interesting point if you go to this, just I'm trying to remember, node restriction is the controller, Joe. It's an admission controller. And this controller has an interesting point, I believe, in the documentation somewhere. It says that admins who manage the nodes should be able to apply any of these labels, even in the Kubernetes namespace. And that's what KubeADM does. KubeADM has administrator privileged client. So after the nodes are created, and by the way, nodes are not created by KubeADM, they are created by the kubelet. Then the administrator client can apply any of these Kubernetes.io labels, even though not the one that is node row, something. So I can see a feature, I don't know who I'm agreeing with or disagreeing with, but I can see a feature where Cluster API has a declarative method with, I don't know, wildcards or something, less wild perhaps, where you can put the labels that you want and the labels propagate with whatever mechanism. That will be technically secure, as far as I can tell. As long as you, of course, make this declarative config exposed in a way that is secure, right? That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Lubomir. Vince, you still have the hand raised? Is from before, or you want to add something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okie dokie.
I just wanted to add one more comment at the end here, and I apologize for the noise. So I think the discussion about widening the metadata propagation is great. Like I'm all in favor of that. We're also having an issue similar to this in the Carpenter community as well, where some labels have rules around how they're propagated. I don't think it changes what I would like to do with the cluster autoscaler though, because I think we should make that label a little clearer where it's coming from. Right now, it just says cluster API. And I think, yeah, it'll be great if we update the metadata propagation. But for now, let's make it fit. And then users will have a very clear idea of where that label comes from, what it's used for. So when I get a PR up, I'll bring it back here and just mention it to the community in case folks are interested. But I appreciate the discussion too. Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, great puntualization, Mike. And sorry if I derailed the discussion on some slightly related topic.
It's all good. It's a popular topic, I know.
Okay, thank you very much. We are at the end of our discussion point and discussion topics. We can move to provider updates, and the first is from Nolan.
Yeah, so just putting a call for help out here that the Kappa CI, especially the periodics and intents, has been unhealthy for a little while. I've taken some time to try to squash some of the issues. But if folks are looking to contribute, we could definitely use some help diving into these. In particular, the EKS tests. I think we don't have a whole lot of expertise on the current maintainership team, or the folks who do have expertise don't have a whole lot of time. So I do have some PRs up to help fix some of this. But if folks could maybe take a look at different jobs, especially the ETEs, and maybe open issues and PRs, that would be awesome.
Yep, and thanks. Let me just add that working on fixing triaging and fixing issue in CI is a great way to understand how things work. It will be, a crash course on how things works. And thank you for the call for action. And next up is Daniel.
Yeah, I had an idea to give an update on the state of things with the add-on provider fleet. This is a add-on provider. I think it was demoed a couple of months ago. Since then, we had a release, which beyond default, basically the new version, also added builds for ARM, so we can try it on something non-conventional. And I guess most importantly, it's more aligned with native cluster API right now. So the flow of installation is add-on works as you first install the, I guess, provider manifests via cluster STL or copy operator. And if you create the customer resource, it will install the fleet in your management cluster automatically. And this way you can start fleet and try it out for yourself with some of things like bundle synchronization across those clusters, etc. And on top of that, since this is Rust-based implementation of controller, I wanted to basically make sure that cluster APIs for use is available for public. So there's a crate called cluster API-RS, which automatically synchronizes versions of CRDs exposed in cluster API. And it also has released this night automatically the new version of Rust APIs. So you can try this by yourself. It should be fully compatible, and you can build your own cluster API integration on top of that. So yeah, have a look if you're interested in this. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Looks great. Great work there, team. Next up is Matt.
Thanks. Yeah, we haven't Cluster API Azure. We haven't checked in a little bit. So I just wanted to report we've been vendoring in 1.9.0, and I know it released today. We still have a couple errors, but we should be able to merge that soon once we figure those out. And then I don't know if people were paying attention, hopefully not holding us to account, but we did plan to have a release about 2 weeks ago. And essentially, we're in a situation where Microsoft is super serious about security issues, so much so that our developer accounts are highly restricted. And so we're trying to work out a workflow that makes it easier for us as well as for contributors to develop, because right now we're a little stuck. And we decided to delay the release until that's all worked out, and we're very, very close. So we should have a new minor release soon and also have CAPI 1.9 vendored in pretty soon.
Thank you for the update. If you need help with 1.9, feel free to ping.
Thanks.
Next up is Jonathan.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I cut a 1.4 release for the Visualizer app, and just had some changes like I made all the nodes collapsible. I added syntax highlighting to the CRD views, and I also set up support for filtering resource logs when they're not in a JSON format. I PR'd those into Cappy and CapZ, so you should be able to try it out when you get the chance.
Thank you very much, and also a reminder that if you are using Cluster API development with Tilt, the visualizer is available. It is just a line if you're in your Tilt setup, and you will get the visualizer, and it is pretty handy when you're looking at clusters. So use it. And with this, we are at feature group update. Mike.
Yeah, you almost forgot me there, but yeah, feature group meeting in about 10 minutes. We got a couple exciting patches up. We're looking to update our Carpenter to 1.8 Cluster API and 1.0 Carpenter. So we're trying to keep things up to date. Come chat with us, and yeah, that's about it.
Okie dokie. Thank you, everyone. It was a great discussion today. Again, reminder, KPI 1.9 is out. Use it, test it, report issue if you find them. And thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks for Fabrizio.